When was the last time you used a sidearm to aid you in blowing your load? Now, not all sidearms are created equal, and when it comes to blowing your load, Trespasser is second to none. Today's build will boost Trespasser's damage, which will allow us to go on long streaks of kills that will constantly maintain and refresh damage output while simultaneously taking advantage of Arc 3.0. This build has no super requirements, although Gathering Storm is one of our favorite supers this season. For our melee, we'll be using Disorienting Blow, which on hits, blinds targets and amplifies you. While amplified, your handling and movement speed are increased. For our grenades, we've chosen, of course, Storm Grenade. The damage output for this grenade tops any of the others, so it's a no-brainer. We've actually made an entire build focused around Storm Grenades on our Titan, so go check those out. We've also chosen Marksman Dodge for our class ability, which will reload our equipped weapon when we dodge. This is going to be super important for damage uptime on this build. Now, moving on to our aspects, we've gone with Lethal Current, which states that after dodging, your next melee attack has increased lunge range. It also jolts the targets and creates a damaging aftershock. Damaging any jolted target with melee attacks also blinds them. Our second aspect is Flow State. Defeating a jolted target makes you amplified, and while you're amplified, your dodge recharges more quickly. You're more resilient while dodging, and your reload speed is increased. Now on to our fragments. We've selected Spark of Resistance to give us damage reduction when surrounded by enemies, and considering you're using a sidearm, that's not that hard to do. Spark of Discharge for a chance to generate Ionic Traces when we kill a target with an arc weapon, hence Trespasser. We also have Spark of Shocks to jolt targets with our arc grenades, followed up by Spark of Focus to increase our class ability energy when sprinting. Now let's get into the gear that we're rocking for this build. Our exotic weapon of choice is Trespasser, which was the exotic offering in Season of the Haunted. Trespasser is a burst arc sidearm, whose main attraction is the perk Unrepentant, which states that reloading after defeating a target causes the next burst to be a longer, more powerful super burst, aka blowing your load. Now this super burst increases the damage per bullet of Trespasser by a whopping 200% when active. But since the super burst has a longer duration than normal, 6 shots compared to the normal 3 that we're doing in the same period of time, this is actually a 500% increase in damage for a single burst. Giggity. Unless that burst kills the target though, Unrepentant will disappear and we'll be right back to our base damage output. But thanks to the perk, Be the Danger, final blows with Unrepentant will automatically reload the weapon, providing another Unrepentant super burst. That means you're able to blow your loads back to back, one after another. So as long as we're chaining kills together, Trespasser will always be doing that extra 500% more damage with every single burst. By the way, Trespasser has an exotic catalyst, essentially granting you tunnel vision, more useful inside of PvP, but again, stronger target acquisition never hurts. Now, the next order of business is to increase the damage of Trespasser. Even more so, we can start chaining kills on higher health targets and really take advantage of that extra damage output. For our exotic armor, we're going to be using Mechaneer's Tricksleeves. This comes with the exotic perk Spring-Loaded Mounting, which increases sidearm ready and reload speed. But while critically wounded, swapping to a sidearm increases its damage. It also provides a large benefit to the airborne effectiveness stat of sidearms. The biggest drawback to this exotic is, of course, being critically wounded to receive the damage buff from Mechaneer's, which, by the way, sits at 100% increase in damage. But even if we rarely see this damage buff, the increase in ready and reload speed is really what makes this worth rocking. That extra damage is just an added cherry on top. A nice cherry, but don't go out of your way and kill yourself trying to proc it. Now on to our mods. This is where things start to get interesting. On our Void Helmet, we have 2 Dynamo mods, which increases super regen when using our class ability. We'll be utilizing our dodge a lot with this build, so we're going to be constantly feeding our super. We're also going to be taking advantage of Surprise Attack, which consumes stacks of Charge with Light and gives you charge magazine stacks. Now each Charge with Light equates to 5 shots, allowing for each bullet fire from our sidearm to get 40% more damage. On our gauntlets, we'll be using a sidearm reload mod combined with Focusing Strike. Now, of course, depending on the content, you can either replace either of these mods or anti-champion mods, but Focusing Strike grants class ability energy when we cause damage with our melee attack, which is extremely helpful, but granted, not necessary. We also have elemental armaments, which say that combat weapon final blows with the damage type matching our subclass element have an escalating chance to spawn an elemental well. To give you some insight into our inner workings of this mod, for every kill we get, in this case for our arc weapon, there is a percentage chance for a well to spawn. If a well doesn't spawn, then the next add kill has an increased chance to spawn a well. This goes on until elemental well is spawned, and then the percentage resets. Now, we're finding lots of rank and file enemies like this build is designed for, then we'll be swimming in arc wells just from getting kills with Trespasser. For our void chests, we're running 2 thermal shock platings to be able to tank damage, along with Reaping Wellmaker. Now, I know this may be a weird choice for an arc build, but it's going to make sense here pretty soon. Reaping Wellmaker spawns a void well on the next kill after using our class ability. And considering how often we're going to be dodging, cranking out these void wells will be very easy. Now, moving on to our boots, we have Font of of might. Picking up an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type grants a temporary bonus to weapon damage of that same elemental type. This means that any arc wells we pick up are going to increase our arc damage by 25%, and this buff lasts for 10 seconds. And then finally, our class item will have stasis as its affinity. We're going to be rocking utility kickstart to give us back class ability energy when we use our dodge, trace evidence to spawn ionic traces from combatants affected by arc debuffs, and elemental charge, which gives us charge with light for every well we pick up, and a second charge with light if it matches our subclass. This is what's going to convert all of our well mods into the language surprise attack understands, charge with light. So how it works? First, you'll pull out your Trespasser, you'll kill a red bar enemy, and once you've secured the kill, you dodge. Reloading Trespasser because of marksman dodge, activating Unrepentant. Our next kill will spawn a void well that once we pick up will give us 1 stack of charge with light because of elemental charge. This translates to 5 stacks or 5 shots of increased sidearm damage, and this occurs when we reload because of surprise attack. All the while, we have a chance of spawning an arc well that will grant us 2 stacks of charge with light or 10 shots of bonus sidearm damage, as well as 10 seconds of bonus arc weapon damage due to Font of Might. Now, we can only hold 2 stacks of charge with light at a time, but by the time we get 3 kills with Trespasser, we should have our dodge back because of the regen provided by utility kickstart, as well as Spark of Focus and the ions from Spark of Discharge and Trace Evidence. Dodging will reload Trespasser again, consuming our charge with light stacks, and procking Unrepented again. And again, this procs as long as we secure an enemy kill in that magazine. Now, being amplified will also increase our dodge regen speed because of flow state, which, by the way, we should already have activated because of our rapid Trespasser final blows. Now, if we don't, we can always melee a target with lethal current, which will be activated from our previous dodge. All we need to do is hit a target with our melee to jolt them and damage surrounding targets. Now, disorienting blow amplifies us without having to kill the jolted target, but also blinds every target nearby that's hit with that chain damage from jolts. Now, all of these targets are now debuffed and will generate ionic traces once killed, giving us even more regeneration. Now, if you need more traces, we still have our Storm Grenade, which will also jolt targets thanks to Spark of Shock. Now, we're already reaping many benefits here from Mechaneers, but if our health does ever go critical, swap to your kinetic and then swap back to Trespasser to activate that damage buff, which only lasts until your health leaves critical, but it's still a nice bump there in damage. Now, it's also a good time to mention here that every damage buff that we've been using does stack with each other. We've got a spreadsheet here curated by our good friend Court to carefully formulate this build to take advantage of every possible damage buff available. Now, testing the total damage of all of these buffs combined, Unrepentant, Font of Might, Surprise Attack, and Mechaneer's Tricksleeves, brought our damage up from 2,388 per shot versus Carl to 25,146 per shot. That's 144,876 damage per burst. Now, don't expect to see these numbers regularly. Chances of all these buffs aligning is very slim, and expect to only see 2 buffs active at any given time. Another benefit to Trespasser that isn't addressed in the weapon description is its high hit registration behavior and over penetration. It's almost like this weapon has a built-in AoE effect, because every time I use this build, adds that are stacked on top of each other will die at once from a single burst of Trespasser. Now, this may just be due to Trespasser's pulse behavior. You can even drag your reticle of the weapon over a group of ads and kill several enemies just from spraying the weapon. Now, as far as other weapons in your kinetic slots, you really won't be swapping too much, as you're more than likely going to be taking advantage of Trespasser for everything. Now, this is by no means like a meta perk, but recombination actually would pair very nicely here considering how much we're using Trespasser, as elemental final blows increases the damage of this weapon's next shot. Now, your only options for this is, of course, Succession and the Slug Shotgun Heritage. Both are drops from the Deep Stone Crypt raid, and both have artifact mods this season. We have Anti-Barrier Sniper and Unstoppable Shotgun. Now, from our testing, recombination can stack up to 10 times, meaning 10 kills with Trespasser will grant the max damage increase of 90% for Heritage, and actually 100% for Succession. This greatly cranks up our damage, and again, it's one of those things that you swap off to just to take advantage of those artifact mods. For your heavy, I do recommend an arc weapon to take advantage of Font of Might. Options include things like Storm Chaser, Hothead, or even Plank Strike. Overall, guys, this build is meant to take advantage of your sidearm. Now, in high-end PvE content, survivability does start to become more important. So you can slot out things like Mechaneer's Tricksleeves for, say, Worm Husk, just to bump your health off when you dodge. And considering you're dodging a bunch, that would be very nice. Another play you can make for survivability is swapping out Font of Might for Well of Tenacity. You'll be missing out on that extra 25% damage, but you'll be getting that whopping damage resistance with Well of Tenacity. Ultimately, this build shines most in activities with lots of ads that can feed into our generation. We've tested this build in Catch Crash, Strikes, even the King's Fall raid, and it performs wonderfully. It won't destroy solo in-game content, but it can definitely work well with a fire team. Dim link in the description, guys. cards. And if you want to check out our other builds, we'll have cards to each of those placed on this video. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.